Let's get your computer stuff.
Put it there. Oh yeah. And I have a question. Is the password on this?
Oh, yeah. I'll show you.
It's not quite time yet. scattered throughout, so please, if you don't have a seat, come forward and get a seat. So everyone's comfy, great. I want to thank you all for coming. It's fantastic. I see a lot of people who have not been here in a long time, and some new people that I haven't seen before, which is really exciting. Thank you very much for coming. And I want to thank my team who just do such an incredible job making this space into a space where we can have a guest talk, and it just seems so convivial and lovely, especially kicking off the year this way. We're really, really happy. I'm still struggling with land acknowledgements, but as close as I've gotten so far is we live and work with joy on the ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Still working on it. I don't want it to feel formulaic, blah, 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 because it isn't meant that way, but it's hard. I find it struggling. So if you have any suggestions, please send them on. It'd be great. So you didn't come to hear me, you came to hear Philippe. Enjoy.
Hi everyone. Oh, hi everyone. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. There's seats in the front, just in case you don't want to stand, and it'll make me feel more comfortable too. That's my name. I'm French Canadian. I come from Montreal. I live in London. And the talk today is a mix of what I did before in order to get here, and also how to come up with ideas. I come up with ideas by making things. I don't come up with ideas by sitting in front of a computer. And I guess this talk is about trying to make yourself a space in the design world. It's a really big world. There's space for everybody, and you just got to find whatever works for you and do it to the best of your ability. And then you'll be given a chance by someone, and you should jump on it. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, so it's about designing and making. So I'm going to show you a succession of finished products that don't look like they have much to them. This is a table for Zanata. This is a tap series for Quadro. This is a shelving. This is a light for floss that's upstairs. Armchairs, SCP. Outdoor chairs, Hem. Resident Sasha chair, SCP. Ishinomaki chair. Varney. This is a Canadian company called Umbra Shift a long time ago. This is a resident from New Zealand, Matter. Desede from Switzerland, Italian company. Ace Hotel Stools, Itala Glass. Anyway, the list goes on. You see all these things. There's very little to talk about when you look at all these inanimate objects, because they're just exactly that. And the point of this talk is to basically tell you how I got to design all the things that I just kind of like quickly shifted upon, and how I was given a chance to design those things for all these amazing companies, and how I got here, how I got there. So I went to school in a place called Design Academy Eindhoven, in Eindhoven, Netherlands. I come from Canada. I got a grant from the Canadian government. I got a plane ticket, and I went to school in Paris. And right before I was meant to fly back to Canada, I got an internship in Amsterdam. And my boss got me in an interview at Design Academy Eindhoven the day before school started. And I was very lucky because I suppose they do things differently in the Netherlands. They accepted me and I started the next day and didn't come back to Canada. So this is the Witte Dame. That's the building where I spent a few years learning about process-based design. What's process-based design? It is how you design things by making discoveries, making errors, being inspired by that and coming up with a different product that you would have thought that you started with. A lot of people, have this idea that design is this thing that you design with perfection on a piece of paper, and it ends up being what's produced and what's made. Well, that's not at all how I work, because I'm not a great designer, and my way of getting there is by making a lot of mistakes and coming up to a conclusion. So, okay, these are the people why I really wanted to go to Eindhoven to begin with. Some of you might know Droog Design. Droog Design is a very important part of design history. Kind of democratized design, made it kind of fully understandable. You have the Duhit chair by Marion van der Pol and the chest of drawers by Theo Remy. And these two things, I remember seeing them in a design magazine and absolutely needing to be part of this reinterpretation of design that was completely different post-90s minimalism towards this very democratic, strange reinterpretation of what we see as design. Some was upcycling, some was making it DIY, doing it yourself, working on reworking preconceived ideas, and that's why I wanted to go there and be part of it. I went to a department called Man and Living. Man and Living was solely focused on reinterpreting how we manufactured things and why and how we manufactured things. That was my grad show. I made an inflatable table done from military inflatable platforms. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And then I graduated. I was really lucky, went to Eindhoven. At the time, it was a school that was very, very publicized. When I graduated, I was shown in a space in Milan, and my first client out of school was Volkswagen. I did chair for them, and then I started working with Verdracht. At the same time, I landed a job at a designer in London called Tom Dixon, moved to London, started doing my own work, and about after a year in, after working with Tom, I had a lot of friends that were doing a lot of shows, and all of us collaborated, and all of us tried to involve each other's work. Even London at the time, it doesn't feel that way necessarily anymore, but London at the time was a place of extreme community when it came to design, and people were very generous with sharing ideas, sharing spaces, and coming together. It wasn't about being, your individual designer and only doing your work and wanting to show your work, but it was gaining power, kind of like the penguins stay warm in the winter by huddling together. So after being in the London design scene, which at the time, for some reason, gained a lot of attention, all of these design scenes in other cities started noticing. So this is one of my very first things at the Kunsthalle in Vienna. They brought us over, my friend Sasha, and they asked us to create something out of white paper. And a lot of those, you gotta understand, a lot of design of this era was a reinterpretation of everyday items or a reinterpretation of what is design. So this is a little project where we're asked to work with white paper only. I decided to work with thermochromic paper because it had properties, obviously, that are thermochromic and were interesting. And they brought my friend Sasha and I to a museum box in the middle of the city, and then we started working. A lot of my work is about starting to work right away and not thinking too much. So, like any job, you always should start with a drill in case you don't really know where it's going. This was a bad example, but this drill was later reapplied in a way that could be mixing paper and throwing clay. I know it makes no sense, but we came up with it really quickly. And then we started making pots by throwing paper instead of clay. And we gotta understand, all this work is just exploration work. Okay, yeah, and when you sand it, the thermochromic ink changes the color of the pot, and then you can come in later maybe and use a hair dryer and then you change the color of whatever you're working on. Okay, so my point is, I'm not really making anything that you can eat spaghetti in, but the point of the work that we were creating there over the course of a weekend was to create a body of work reinterpreting how we use materials. It has a right to exist. I know a lot of people are probably going to find this extremely silly, but it is a way to explore and develop ideas. And my practice probably for the first 5 years was only about that. It was only about developing ideas, exploring ideas, and the main reason for that is because no one wanted to hire me. I didn't have any clients, I didn't have anything, but I had some people that were interested in working with me. Some design weeks in Europe, I had some private collectors, I had people that were doing shows. Anyway, you're gonna see more of it. So I'm just gonna talk about process, how that works, and how that worked for me. Okay, so after doing that one job in Vienna, this company called Lobmeyer liked what we were seeing, and they were like, hey, we make these beautiful chandelier out of brass and glass. Would you like to do an installation for me? And I was just like, okay, we're gonna use your sand that you make the glass with, and you're gonna use all of your brassware to do something. So, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of the presentation. Okay, sorry. A supermarket in East London wanted us to do a Christmas presentation, and I had a bag of rice, and it was Christmas time. I don't know if the speaker works. Oh yeah. Okay, so it was Christmas time, and I thought the broken bag of rice was kind of sweet. It reminded one of snow and all those Christmas feelings, and it did create something interesting on the ground, which was gravity doing its own thing. So eventually we decided to work with sand and gravity, and then at one point when we were tired of doing it ourselves, we decided to work with disco ball motors and battery packs and so on and so forth. Eventually it started kind of creating interesting patterns on the floor. And you gotta understand, this was a different time. This was like 15 years ago. We convinced this Lobmeyer company to make a giant sand spirograph machine out of really, really expensive brass, and then it would be this like infinite sort of sand creating machine spirograph thing. And then we designed it for them, and then we begged them to do it, and then finally they did it. And then they created this spirograph strange machine that distributed sand and then created patterns on the floor using sand. At the time, there was a lot of companies that were interested in just communicating their companies and giving work to designers. That's not a traditional, like, hey, design me a glass. It was more about, it was like design something using the ethos of my company and communicate something about us. So that was a way to survive as a designer, to just kind of create something, design something that's different, that's not a chair or a table for a brand. Eventually, the thing became quite well known. It toured. This was at the Design Museum. For some reason, people liked it. But my point here is that everything I'm going to talk about today always ends up somewhere else. So I started with this very strange sand spirograph machine, and then 6 months later, 1882 Ceramics asked me to come up with ceramics, plates. And I thought it was a good idea to kind of reuse the same sand gravity thing that I had been using, because nature and gravity creates things that are beautiful, and I didn't want to design it myself in a computer. So I grabbed a record player and a bucket and some sand. And I was interested in a way that you could just like do something circularly, and then you would eventually get a curve, you would eventually get an elevation, you would get a texture, right? So eventually, hopefully this works. Oh yeah, so I'm going to show you how this process is applied to making ceramics. You're going to see a much skinnier version of me there. So you gotta understand that at the time, I thought it was really important. Obviously, I don't have the time to do this anymore, but at the time, I thought it was really important for every object that exists, that I made, to have a story that was created in a way that was not coming from the computer. It needed to have soul, it needed to have a life, it needed to have a whole existence that existed in order for it to create this object. Obviously, I work differently today, but I still think it's very important to take process as an initial way to create things. So in this very specific demonstration, I'm using a process I've done for something else. I'm creating a curve just by gravity by using sugar instead of sand because I'll be washing it later. I make a mold out of silicon and then I copy it and then I gave it to the ceramics people and then eventually they created a whole range of ceramics based on these strange shapes that I made. They were very normal looking bowls. They looked like anything, but to me they made a lot of sense and they were something that weren't designed in a computer, they were designed by gravity and things that are real, and it meant a lot to me. Although it looked like a regular bowl and no one cared. But eventually you're going to see the range that comes out of this exercise that I repeated ad nauseum, and eventually we got, should be coming up, this is the next one. Yeah, eventually we got a crockery range that originated from that way of depositing sand. Okay, process is literally anything you want it to be. It could be like writing things, it could be drawing with you'll see that later, drawing with a crayon. It could be like throwing a tennis ball coated in paint at a wall. Like literally any action, could be kicking this light. Any action will cause a reaction. You'll always forget, you're always gonna discover something, and you're always gonna see one thing that you could like take out of its context and make it into something else. And by making and repeating, that's another way to do process. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do chainmail. Chainmail, you make a mandrel, you get wire around it, you cut them one by one, you ply them back together on top of each other, and then eventually you learn about an ancient Japanese techniques of doing chainmail, and eventually you make these rugs, and it makes a lot of sense, and eventually an art gallery likes it, picks it up, and then makes it into an infinite series. And basically this is what gave me a down payment to help buy a flat in London, because they were crazy enough, someone was crazy enough to commission 20 of these, and away they went. And then eventually it became something that was repeated, and now my gallery in New York City, Cell 94, stocks these rugs that are made of copper. And all this came by learning a craft, repeating it, and then seeing where it goes, just trusting that maybe it will end up somewhere. Once again, it was never planned. We just happened to have wire at the studio, and we just did it. You know, you should all just do it. Everybody should just do it. Everybody gets so scared about making an error, and making an error is the whole point. Okay, I'm going to show you other people's work because other people are important. I did a workshop in south of France, and then we were talking about this process of making things and repeating things. And the whole point was to use nature and everything that was around us. And this lovely student completely impressed all of us and did this repeat pattern, and decided to weave a field, and she wove an entire field, and everybody was invited to go through her project. And very, very small movements will eventually lead to something that's just really beautiful, and that's just really important. And also, like something like this, like it will die away in the winter and it'll come back, but just the fact that it was done out of nothing, using nothing, and it's just such an important piece of work that I thought it was. And it's just using this idea of making something repeatedly. There's many artists that I'm a big fan of, like Tara Donovan, who repeats the art of making over and over again until you get this sort of liberation. Anyway, let's talk about something else. So all of these things that you see, they're all kind of eras of things I was really into at one point. You know how like some kids or whatever, like at one point, like I became really into stop motion. Like stop motion was a language I really needed to develop and explore, and my staff and I got really, really into it. And then we developed a way to communicate with our clients for like 2 years, and we'd show everything in stop motion, only in stop motion. And also it gave us ideas by working in stop motion. So this, yeah, okay. So this started, stop motion started when we made a Christmas card online for our studio, you know, like a And then instead of saying Christmas, because we want it to be inclusive, we just said happy time off, obviously. Yeah, we got really into stop motion. It was really interesting. And then we got some clients that were asking us at the time. Once again, you got to understand, when you're a young designer, you take any job that comes. So if you know a luxury retailer asks you to do their windows, you do it. If so like Velextra or asked us to create windows for them, and then this is how we communicated their shop window installation. So we cast their wallets into resin, and then we even put sound on it so that the clients thought it would be interesting. And then the same thing happened with this other shop window installation, where we had these same sort of cast resin wallets kind of dropping down. Anyway, the point is that whilst we were doing these things, working with these balls for Velextra, we were really interested in the ball kind of like traveling, going around. And then when the Miami Design District asked us to, sorry, I'll just pause this. Okay, so everything influences the next thing over and over again. Like we create nothing new, we're always just inspired from the thing we did before, and then you pick up one thing and then you put it there. And it's totally different the next time around. So Miami Design District asked us to do the Christmas installation, which is like terrifying because it's in the design district, everybody sees it, there's a budget, there's all these things. So anyway, we were interested in, after working with that installation, working with these balls running around, and we showed them this. And we said, we need a lot of money, and you need to trust us, and it's gonna be great. And the only way to sell it to them, because there was no other way to visualize it, we could have done it in 3D, we could have done it in a million ways. Anyway, we didn't stop motion because we thought it was the only way to show exactly what it was going to feel like. Right. So we're sitting in a meeting, and this is what I showed them, and then they loved it, and they were like, "Here's all this money, make it." And then we made this Christmas time light installation. It was zipping. This is the small model. There was a much bigger one too. It was zipping through the streets of Miami, and I would never do that kind of work ever again. It's too scary. It's terrifying. It did stop working at one point, and they were really not happy with us. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is I never ever would have had this idea if I didn't do the thing before, right? So like, because you can't have this idea by designing stuff in 3D on your computer. It's all chance, all errors, all mistake, and it's always better that way. Anyway, you can see it here, you can see it there. It was fun. Another way about process is working with material you've never touched before. I think my mom tells me sometimes like, oh, I don't know how you're creative. Like, I can never be creative. Like, I don't have it in me. And I always say it's not true because everybody has the capacity to be creative. They just got to try literally anything. So you could get back home tonight and then try knitting or try to glue construction paper together. Literally anything, and you will make a discovery by not thinking too much. Okay, so Caesar Stone is a stone company that was doing all these installations in Milan, and they asked us to do something for them, and and then I convinced them to send my team and I to a factory in France for a month, and give us all the tools and breathing masks, and they asked us like, have you ever worked with stone? And then we were like, no, of course not. And we've never worked with stone, but here you can see 30 days and 30 seconds. So everything you see here came literally from us just jumping in, never worked with stone, didn't have a sketch, and just started making things right away, really quick. And like, just because they felt right, and then like we just walked around the factory and we're like, what's this? And then like, you know, some guy was cutting off a corner of a piece that was wrong. We're like, we're gonna do the entire thing out of this, and really, really quick, and be inspired, and don't think, and make it now. Everybody gets so scared about doing something wrong, and everybody's always thinking so hard, and like you get stuck in this loop, and nothing comes out. You know, no work gets made, and such a sad thing. Anyway, so that ended up being this installation in Milan, blah, blah, blah. This is my studio. On the left-hand side, there is my old assistant, Julian. We're together for 10 years. He's very much responsible for the reason why I'm here, because we created the studio together, and we've worked so well together. No longer, sadly, he moved to nicer climates, lives in Athens, and makes art now. So enough with design, makes art. Very, very good. Okay, I'm going to show you some gallery work. I'm really lucky that most of my business works between working with the gallery world and working with the mass-produced world with brands and, you know, things like this light or this stool. Okay, so I work in New York City with a gallery called Sound 94. Sound 94, I make kind of industrially perfect things that are slick and weird, I suppose, if I had to categorize it. This is some nylon pieces that I made for them. This is a glass garbage chute that is, I think it's 6 floors high. And I work also with a gallery in Athens called The Breeder. For The Breeder, I do very quick handmade things and scrap metal things, especially for them. This is the first day we learned how to weld. Once again, not knowing is your best friend. If you get, I'm sure a lot of people are going to hate me for this because it's, you know, if you don't know how to do something, the results you're going to have are always going to be kind of insignificant, but also fun and ridiculous, just kind of the way a child draws. Anyway, so if you learn how to weld, you look like that. So that's cool. And how to weld is really easy. You need a MIG welder and you know, a bandsaw and a lot of metal, and then you weld it really quickly. You learn how to weld. I think that's the first piece we made, and then we thought it was cool and ended up being hooks for a wall, and then we made chairs. And okay, so that was the beginning of it, and then we showed the gallery in Athens, and then they flew us down and went to the Athens scrapyard. And the Athens scrapyard is amazing because it literally has everything that you could dream of metal-wise. You just need to pick it, cut it up, and re-weld it. And eventually, after a fair amount of time in Athens at the scrapyard and picking things that we really thought were really cool and weird, this is the workshop where we worked out of. It was lovely once again. MIG welder, angle grinder, and a bandsaw. That is all you need. That is all you need to make a lot of work. And after a few weeks, we created everything that you see here, and it became an installation in a gallery. And all of the pieces that you see here are half found, half reinterpreted. You can see there's a cement mixer on the left that became a planter. And anyway, some concrete pouring plates became an armchair, and so on and so forth. The point of this work that I find interesting is that the gallery work speaks to the production work, because the piece that you see on the left may or may not currently be developed to become a real product. Maybe it's a working, it's a mobile working platform to work on. And I never would have come up with this idea in the first place if I didn't find the old weird lawn bowling base and then added a pipe to it and then a platform on top. And you know, the chair on the right is I cut together the highway barriers, and then it just happens to be comfortable because it hits these two spots on the lower back. It's all discovery and it's all random, and the best stuff is random. I mean, a lot of people will, obviously, we're in a church of non-random, super considered things, but my way of making discoveries is random and mistakes. So, that's how I started working with ECAL, this school in Switzerland that I really, really like. They saw my project, they were like, will you come and show our students how to go to a junkyard? And I was like, okay. I mean, you just go to the junkyard and you pick up some stuff, and you cut it up, and do whatever. But it sounds simplistic. It's got to be something that it's instinctive, and you have it in you, and you got to be excited when you see it, and you got to jump at the occasion and change it really quickly. Anyway, the students are so smart. They create a really interesting work, like this radiator, and this one I really adore. It's an air duct that was created by putting a leather trimming on top and a circle at the bottom, and then a spring to connect it together. And then you gotta understand that Italian visual language is just so strong, and then you always have this reinterpretation of there's a word that I'm forgetting. Okay, I'm gonna show you this one. It's my absolute favorite. So for the ECAL students, I didn't only want them to do these one-off gallery pieces. I wanted them to find things that are constantly being discarded and then take this thing so that you can show up at the junkyard on a regular basis and create a mass-produced item, right? And this one kid, this really smart kid, he started making these barbecues out of the connectors of the trains that were being discarded. All he did is to drill 6 holes in the bottom and made a stainless steel grill on top. And that created a barbecue that could be replicated forever. So like 1,000,000 times better than what I've done. So smart. I don't have his name, sadly, but he knows who he is. This was a heating chair using a radiator, which I thought was very smart. Could help, homelessness. Or anyway, this is the installation of that body of work from the kids in Malouin. And they created okay. Am I doing good for time? Yes, okay. Right, so all this stuff, right? I did all this stuff, and I did all these installations and all this stuff, and eventually, thank God, a furniture company approached me, and they're like, hey, do you want to work together? And I was like, yes! That's what I wanted to do the whole time. But I've been doing all this crazy stuff thinking you would notice me. And they did. And then they said, we want you to design like an armchair, and then it needs to be upholstered, it needs to be comfortable. And at that time, we never really worked with industry, so I didn't know about cold forming, polyurethane foam, and these kinds of things, which I do now. But at the time, I really didn't know how to do that. So we went to IKEA, and we got a crappy mattress, and we took the cover out, and then we started manipulating the mattress really badly. And by manipulating over and over again, eventually we kind of created this shape that looked like a strange, doll's hand. And eventually we kind of showed it to them. They liked it. It became the Molo armchair for Establishment Sons. Not my favorite bit of work I've done. I gotta say, it's big and it's stupid, but it's really old, and you gotta forgive me. But at the time, it did give me a little bit of a push, and it was fun. And for some strange reason, it is very popular now. It's in every Alaya store in the world. So what goes around comes around, and eventually people like it. It's a big, silly, horrible thing made of foam. Okay. Okay. So as I said, being a designer, there's a lot of ways that you can make money, be seen, be part of the design community, and it's not always making furniture. So I'm going to show you a project that I did for Hem. Hem is a Swedish company that I work with. They do outdoor chairs that I've made, and we're currently working on a new project. Anyway, they asked me to create a really very specific demand that they did. They were like, we want you to do a show about creating room dividers in New York City. And I answered, no problem. I will need a credit card and a hotel for 2 weeks, and a workshop. And they gave us a workshop, a credit card, and a hotel. And then I decided that I was going to do a show about screens by never walking more than 500 meters in a diameter of where I was to begin with. And we made lots of screens using whatever we could find in a 500-meter diameter. So obviously started with balloons. That's a way to divide screens. Balloons and tape, tape and bubble wrap. Then it got more complicated and more sturdy. perforated metal and a single piece of string, which made it kind of stand up on its own. Netting, cork, etc. Anyway, eventually, after all of this exploration, it became an installation, became work. It became an installation of the different works around this theme of separating space. But this is not the real thing I want to talk to you about or show you. The main thing I want to show you is that one of the items that became a real design product, which is this thing right here. Oh, sorry. Which is this thing right here. This is the very last thing that was left in the studio that we had gathered and collected. We had 2 bricks, and then we had some tent poles, some LED tape, and some string, and some tie wraps, right? And then very quickly, we put all that stuff together, put the LED tape on the tent poles, got the 2 bricks, put it together with the little tie wraps at the top, and eventually we showed it to a company, and it became a real product. It became, this is done by Roland Hill, and it's a light that goes over your entire living room, has 2 weights at the bottom. The point I'm making here is, once again, I'm repeating myself, but I never ever would have thought of that just by sketching or being in the computer or whatever. It's all mistakes, it's all random, and that's the best stuff for me. The random things that you discover, that you make a discovery, it's the best. And then that became a product, and it still, strangely, still works. People like this product. Okay. So I'm going to close off this part of the presentation just by showing errors or how these products kind of came to life. Okay, this is the offset stool, the one that's right here. The offset stool literally came because I drilled the leg wrong. and then I put it into the base, and it would kind of like go offset, and it was wrong, and I was like, here we go. That's why it sticks out here. And some of them stick out, some of them don't. You never know where they're gonna fall together. And how do you make a 3-legged stool that's gonna be really popular and be in every cause changing room? Well, it's just strange, isn't it? It's a strange looking thing, and it's an accident, it's an error, and it makes you look twice. And once again, you can't design this stuff. This is the Umbra shift mirror a really long time ago. That came when I was trying to make shelving brackets. I don't know, and then it became a mirror. This is literally just taken from an electric plate on a pole that became these chairs. These are some concrete castings that I made that were repetitive, and then that became kind of a building in Stockholm, which later on, this is some glassware for Itala, which was done by experimenting with MDF and gluing it on the left-hand side. Became all these shapes for them. These rotating tables just came from taking apart ball bearings. And then this ball bearing, so this lamp that you see here comes literally from these pieces. Floss called, and then they were like, we really like your work. We want you to design something that costs, how much does it cost? I don't know. Anyway, it was the price they wanted. But we really like these things. We like your work. We don't know why. And then I just thought the ball bearing was going to be the central element, and then the ball bearing was going to become a magnetic element, and then it became the light. My point is, so you guys see where I'm going with this? Everything is together, everything is a result of something else, and you think something is not going to go anywhere. You got to keep all of your sketchbooks and all of your photos and all of your crappy models and everything that eventually is always going to be applicable to a different product or a different project. This is some nylon furniture. This literally came by me drawing with a crayon, and it became these rugs for Sissi Tapi on the left. And then they developed this dyeing yarn process that would basically end up looking like this crayon, irregular drawing. Oh yeah, this one. This was here. I'm told that it was here. It's sold. Thank God. It was on the floor for too long. But this became quite popular, and this is for Desede. And my meeting, when they asked me what I wanted to do, I just brought them this one model that you're going to see in the next photo that I made really quickly. I took a piece of foam and I folded it twice. And that was it. You know, one piece of foam, folded twice, put a pin in it, and it was really good. It was really good because it was so quick and it was so real, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say. If something feels real and simple, people are going to connect to it. And I just like, you know, I'm no maestro designing with like the pen and doing all the curves. I don't. My favorite stuff comes always as an accident. This is a table for Zanata. Comes from the bottom of a piece of ceramic that makes the contact with the kiln. This is a chair for hem that made by us experimenting making chairs with tube metal by hand. This is literally a chair that happened because I folded a card and it didn't stick, and that was the perfect backrest for the chair. This is what I wanted to talk to you about. So to wrap it up, I got really lucky to be doing what I'm doing. Now I work with brands that are really amazing, and I come from nowhere, Canada, a small town called Valley. And I always loved making things, and this is my way of doing what I do now and how I got there. Thank you.
Okay, you can have to stand up and yell, or I can run with the microphone.
What was your biggest mistake, and how were you able to turn it around?
Oh dear. I don't think any mistake is the biggest one, and they always keep happening. They just keep happening, and how you're able to turn it around is just to try something else or keep trying the thing that didn't work. So it's not about one specific mistake, it's the biggest mistake, because there's no such thing. You know, as long as you're healthy and you can eat, you know, like you can get away with a lot. So actually the biggest mistake would be to stop trying. I know it's like a bit like emo, but yeah, it's true. Something goes wrong, try again, and that's how you turn it around. Yeah.
In your early days, how did you market your ideas?
Okay, I didn't market my ideas in the early days because I was really lucky. I went to a school that was super publicized, right? So my school at the time, you gotta understand, I'm really old, and at the time, when you graduated school, you were published in a paper magazine, right? It wasn't online. I mean, the internet existed, I'm not that old. But it wasn't about Instagram, and it wasn't about followers, and it wasn't about being an influencer at all. It was like these magazine editors would come and they would look around at who graduated, and they would be like, oh, this is interesting. And then I got really lucky because I got published really early. I remember, I think my grad show with the silly inflatable table and whatever, I think my grad show got 10 pages in a magazine called Frame, which at the time was such an important magazine, and you know, and then another magazine saw that one, and then so on and so forth. I think I'm really lucky. Also, like, we got to be really honest about this. It's not about talent. Also, my generation was a lot easier for me and us to make it in the design world, because right now the competition that you have plus social media is infinite. So to get a voice across is very difficult. But one thing I can tell you to be seen is to build it, and it will come, always. So I think that's, I was seeing some lovely talented students yesterday, and someone was talking about lack of community and needing to make things, And my advice to that is just do a show over a theme, over a material. Let's say your dad's uncle's neighbor has a yard with like, I don't know, nails. No, but I know it sounds really stupid, but give an infinite nails to all of your designer friends and do a show around it. And then you're gonna create interest, you're gonna create community, and someone is gonna pay attention, always.
A quick question about public commissions. Do you kind of separate or contrast between private and public commissioners? Public, within the, let's say, public art that kind of.
Yeah. So the one of the things at the end was a public commission for the city of Stockholm and the one in Miami. Very often cities have a budget and then they'll give maybe the one, it's called the 1%, or they'll give you a budget to create something for the city. But I find it works exactly the same. Like either you're creating something for a gallery and then rich people end up buying it, or it's for the city and a lot of people get to enjoy it. So personally, all my commissions of the sort were public, I'd be much happier because then a lot more people will get to see it. But also, it takes a long time of being around to be considered for a public work because you need to be seen, you need to, not famous, but people need to know who you are, otherwise you won't get commissioned. But I think, anyway, I don't know if it has anything to do with your question, but I would say that if you're a commissioner for the public realm, giving the commission to young people is probably the best way to kickstart design scene and not just give it to established designers like myself.
Thanks.
Hey Philippe, thank you for your talk today. I really appreciate how you went between your current projects and showed that kind of growth. And I'm wondering, how does letting go and decay feature in your work, and how do you embrace that process of being able to switch so quickly to a different idea and embrace the new material and whatnot?
Just because the material you haven't done yet is the most fun. So if for instance, I got really into welding. I remember, because it's so quick and it doesn't fall apart. Because woodwork's hard. Woodwork, you gotta really think about it. You gotta give it time, and then by the time you do the joint, you hope it holds, it falls apart, and you didn't do it right. Whereas welding's nice and quick. So I guess what I'm saying is if you try something new, you're always gonna pick up one thing that is gonna be of interest. And I think, I don't know, I wouldn't call it decay like you said, but just kind of turning over the new page and the new leaf is that's the whole point of doing design. It's so fun. It's not like we're so lucky. That's why everybody wants to do it, because it's infinite fun forever. You're not just inputting data in a spreadsheet. The whole point is to do something new all the time. So I think, it needs to be met with anticipation and energy. And for, the stuff you've done in the past, you can always talk about it in a presentation like this. Just make sure you have really good photos. It's not...
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Can you speak about color of your pieces? Speak to color.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Most of the colors that I choose them for industrial reasons. Like the nylon pieces that I made, I really like them because they're industrial colors that have different applications for them. I think colors should be honest. I really like when they communicate an actual bit of information rather than be trendy. And I think as well, I don't know if it has anything to do with color, but I'm bringing the idea of trend here, which is the enemy. Never ever do trend or never jump into the color that's currently happening. Remember millennial pink? Yeah. Oh dear. My point is, if it comes to color, sometimes I almost think about color as a way to be part of things that are selling. So I would always try to do the opposite. But people do need to design the interiors of homes, and that's very important. But I really like objects to exist because of their own color and not because they're gonna match within a design realm in an interior. But that is very naive, and to answer your question, I should absolutely care more about color. And I would sell more sofas if I didn't always choose the terrible, inappropriate color. Hey,
We went to the same school, and I was just wondering if,
what I know them.
yeah,
Ah,
It's Oscar.
and
Oscar.
oh my God, hi, Oscar.
I was wondering if, now that you're back in Canada, and the difference between the Canadian and European design scene and all the galleries, do you ever feel like you want to come back, or is there any Canadian companies or some sort of patriotism to bring back the Canadian design?
Well, if there's anyone in the room that wants to give me money, I will come. Oscar, nice to see you. You left the Netherlands. I really like your round bench. Perforated. Yeah. You went to the same school. Great designer in Canada. I think about Canada all the time. Canada, everyone's nice. And it feels collaborative. People feel really friendly. But I have to say, all of my work is in Europe. I'm on a plane probably twice a month to go sign off on a sofa that's being manufactured in Poland, or taps in Italy, or so it wouldn't work long term if I was here. I would have to probably stagger all of my. It could work, and I do miss Canada. But I gotta say, I've kind of built up my whole realm and all of my work to be very Eurocentric. But I do miss it a lot. And if maybe one day I'd be well known enough so that the companies don't care if I don't come and I can be here. But yeah, being in Canada and being part of the scene, I feel like would be really great. I just don't know that many brands that would hire me. But if you know any, let me know. Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you.